As I Please by George Orwell. An advertisement in my Sunday paper sets forth in the form of a picture the 4 things that are needed for a successful Christmas. At the top of the picture is a roast turkey. Below that, a Christmas pudding. Below that, a dish of mince pies. And below that, a tin of liver salt. It is a simple recipe for happiness. First the meal, then the antidote, then another meal. The ancient Romans were the great masters of this technique. However, having just looked up the word vomitorium in the Latin dictionary, I find that after all it does not mean a place where you went to be sick after dinner. So perhaps this was not a normal feature of every Roman home, as is commonly believed. Implied in the above-mentioned advertisement is the notion that a good meal means a meal at which you overeat yourself. In principle, I agree. I only add in passing that when we gorge ourselves this Christmas, if we do get the chance to gorge ourselves, it is worth giving a thought to the 1,000 million human beings, or thereabouts, who will be doing no such thing. For in the long run, our Christmas dinners would be safer if we could make sure that everyone else had a Christmas dinner as well. But I will come back to that presently. The only reasonable motive for not overeating at Christmas would be that somebody else needs the food more than you do. A deliberately austere Christmas would be an absurdity. The whole point of Christmas is that it is a debauch, as it was probably long before the birth of Christ was arbitrarily fixed at that date. Children know this very well. From their point of view, Christmas is not a day of temperate enjoyment, but of fierce pleasures, which they are quite willing to pay for with a certain amount of pain. The awakening at about 4 a.m. to inspect your stockings, the quarrels over toys all through the morning, and the exciting whiffs of mincemeat and sage and onions escaping from the kitchen door, the battle with enormous platefuls of turkey and the pulling of the wishbone, the darkening of the windows and the entry of the flaming plum pudding, the hurry to make sure that everyone has a piece on his plate while the brandy is still alight, the momentary panic when it is rumoured that baby has swallowed the threepenny bit, the stupor all through the afternoon, the Christmas cake with almond icing an inch thick, the peevishness next morning, and the castor oil on December 27th. It is an up-and-down business, by no means all pleasant, but well worthwhile for the sake of its more dramatic moments. Teetotalers and vegetarians are always scandalized by this attitude. As they see it, the only rational objective is to avoid pain and to stay alive as long as possible. If you refrain from drinking alcohol or eating meat, or whatever it is, you may expect to live an extra 5 years, while if you overeat or overdrink, you will pay for it in acute physical pain on the following day. Surely it follows that all excesses, even a one-a-year outbreak such as Christmas, should be avoided as a matter of course. Actually, it doesn't follow at all. One may decide, with full knowledge of what one is doing, that an occasional good time is worth the damage it inflicts on one's liver. For health is not the only thing that matters. Friendship, hospitality, and the heightened spirits and change of outlook that one gets by eating and drinking in good company are also valuable. I doubt whether, on balance, even outright drunkenness does harm, provided it is infrequent. Twice a year, say. The whole experience, including the repentance afterwards, makes a sort of break in one's mental routine, comparable to a weekend in a foreign country, which is probably beneficial. In all ages, men have realized this. There is a wide consensus of opinion, stretching back to the days before the alphabet, that whereas habitual soaking is bad, conviviality is good, even if one does sometimes feel sorry for it next morning. How enormous is the literature of eating and drinking, especially drinking, and how little that is worthwhile has been said on the other side. Offhand, I can't remember a single poem in praise of water, i.e., water regarded as a drink. It is hard to imagine what one could say about it. It quenches thirst. That is the end of the story. As for poems in praise of wine, on the other hand, even the surviving ones would fill a shelf of books. The poets started turning them out on the very day when the fermentation of the grape was first discovered. Whiskey, brandy, and other distilled liquors have been less eloquently praised, partly because they came later in time. But beer has had quite a good press, starting well back in the Middle Ages, long before anyone had learned to put hops in it. Curiously enough, I can't remember a poem in praise of stout, not even draft stout, which is better than the bottled variety in my opinion. There is an extremely disgusting description in Ulysses of the stout vats in Dublin. But there is a sort of backhanded tribute to stout in the fact that this description, though widely known, has not done much towards putting the Irish off their favourite drink. The literature of eating is also large, though mostly in prose. But in all the writers who have enjoyed describing food, from Rabelais to Dickens, and from Petronius to Mrs. Beeton, I cannot remember a single passage which puts dietetic considerations first. Always, food is felt to be an end in itself. No one has written memorable prose about vitamins, or the dangers of excess of proteins, or the importance of masticating everything 32 times. All in all, there seems to be a heavy weight of testimony on the side of overeating and overdrinking, provided always that they take place on recognised occasions and not too frequently. But ought we to overeat and overdrink this Christmas? We ought not to, nor will most of us get the opportunity. I am writing in praise of Christmas, but in praise of Christmas 1947, or perhaps 1948. The world as a whole is not exactly in a condition for festivities this year. Between the Rhine and the Pacific, there cannot be very many people who are in need of liver salt. In India there are, and always have been, about 10 million people who only get 1 square meal a day. In China, conditions are no doubt much the same. In Germany, Austria, Greece, and elsewhere, scores of millions of people are existing on a diet which keeps breath in the body, but leaves no strength for work. All over the war-wrecked areas from Brussels to Stalingrad, other uncounted millions are living in the cellars of bombed houses, in hideouts in the forests, or in squalid huts behind barbed wire. It is not so pleasant to read, almost simultaneously, that a large proportion of our Christmas turkeys will come from Hungary, and that the Hungarian writers and journalists, presumably not the worst paid section of the community, are in such desperate straits that they would be glad to receive presents of saccharin and cast-off clothing from English sympathisers. In such circumstances, we could hardly have a proper Christmas, even if the materials for it existed. But we will have one sooner or later, in 1947 or 1948, or maybe even in 1949. And when we do, may there be no gloomy voices of vegetarians or teetotalers to lecture us about the things that we are doing to the linings of our stomachs. One celebrates a feast for its own sake, and not for any supposed benefit to the lining of one's stomach. Meanwhile, Christmas is here. Or nearly. Santa Claus is rounding up his reindeer, the postman staggers from door to door beneath his bulging sack of Christmas cards. The black markets are humming, and Britain has imported over 7,000 crates of mistletoe from France. So, I wish everyone an old-fashioned Christmas in 1947, and meanwhile, half a turkey, 3 tangerines, and a bottle of whiskey, at not more than double the legal price. Thank you for listening to As I Please by George Orwell. If you have enjoyed this audiobook, please consider subscribing and leaving a like to help in the making of future audiobooks.